subject of 9/11, you've been now investigating it for a few years.
I wouldn't say investigating, just making myself more knowledgeable of it, reading about it, and not necessarily accepting the mainstream media's results and the things that they say, and certainly not accepting the government's conclusions fully.
But you've been actively investigating for the last few months, and without getting into too many specifics of your TV show, you've discovered that they are trying to hide something.
Well, if they're not hiding something, let me put it this way, they're certainly not cooperative. And let's say hypothetically there is no conspiracies, that everything happened the way the government told us it happened, and that everything there is completely truthful. I guess my question would be, then why does the government behave in a manner that makes them look guilty of something and then allows conspiracy theorists the foothold to go with them? Because if they were upfront, forward, and open, and if it truly is what they said, that would then debunk all these theories. It would be an open door to where people would then see, and if the theories are just theories and they aren't reality, it would clearly work out that way for them. But when they give you a story and then won't defend it in any way, shape, or form, and they say that that's it, we stand by it and we take no questions. Like, say, take for example NIST, the people who supposedly investigated 9/11 and all of that. Well, they come out with their report, and they won't even discuss the report. You're supposed to just take the report, accept it, even though you may read the report and you may find 3 or 4 things in there in the report that you have questions about.
Well,
they won't answer those questions.
Well, Governor, they've contradicted their other reports and statements about fuel oil, about weakening steel, about bad construction, about 25% of the south face being knocked out by the North Tower, and then there was video of it not being damaged, like they said, a few windows knocked out. So they've already backed off, and now major scientific firms, who aren't even part of the 9/11 truth movement, are coming out. This just happened the last few weeks, and are saying, well, what about this? What about this section? What about that section? This doesn't make sense. And then major building firms are now being told by the feds, you've got to change how you build buildings now because they're not safe. We thought they were always safe, and large firms are going in and challenging the government's new regulations based on this report, saying this just doesn't add up. So it's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's to me, let the truth stand. If it's what they say, then defend it. And the fact that they just put the reports out and we're to accept them, whether they make sense or not, is ridiculous.
What about Osama bin Laden not being on the FBI's most wanted list for 9/11, and bin Laden not being indicted for 9/11, but he has been put on the list and has been indicted for the coal and the bombings in Africa?
Well, and again, that's very interesting, because it's our government, again, not following it structured the way it's supposed to be. In our law and in the legal process here in the United States, you have to charge someone with a crime before you can arrest them. Or if you do arrest them, you have a certain length of time in which to charge them with a crime. And it just seems to me very strange that we would put a bounty on bin Laden's head before we've actually even charged him. That's worse than the Wild West. I don't think that Wild Bill Hickok and all those people back in the days of the Wild West even operated that way. You have to charge someone with the crime first. That's the way our system is set up. And getting someone charged with the crime is not difficult, because when you go for an indictment, there is no defense. The defense is not represented, so all it requires is the prosecution, and they don't even have to give up all their evidence. All they have to do is go there and show enough evidence that a group of citizens, the empowered grand jury, would say, where there's smoke, there might be fire. And here's enough smoke that, yes, we will bring down an indictment. And what that indictment simply means is there's enough evidence here that a trial should take place. And an indictment doesn't necessarily mean you're guilty, because you still get your day in a court of law where you can go in there and defend yourself. But our country today is not the country that I defended when I was in the service back in the 1970s and 60s. Since 9/11, we have been following the teachings of Hermann Göring,
yes,
a Nazi. And Hermann Göring's teachings before he committed suicide, what he taught us, and we should learn from a guy like him, was that he made the statement that it's very easy to take a country to war because of the fact it doesn't matter if you're a democracy, a dictatorship, whether the people have a say or whether the people don't have a say. It's very easy to take them to war. Number one, you must convince them they're under attack. Number two, you denounce the pacifists for being unpatriotic. And number three, you denounce them for putting the country at risk through the position they take of empowering the enemy. Now, that's exactly what Hermann Göring stated, and that's exactly what we've been following since 9/11. And that disturbs me a great deal, that we would be following what a Nazi would teach. And I think but yet Göring was not a dumb man. The other point he made, which I found very profound, is how is it that we're able to convince a man to leave the farm, to go to war, when the very best results he will get at the end is merely being able to come back to the farm?
Wow.
You're not going to gain anything more. You're not going to get anything more. The best you can hope for is that you won't die, that you won't be physically disabled, and that you'll be able to come back when it's all over and do the same thing you were doing before you left. And yet our public, we're able to do this to people. We're able to convince people to leave the farm and go fight these wars based upon patriotism. When I read about Operation Northwoods, and for those that are not familiar with it, in a nutshell, it was the Pentagon submitted to President Kennedy in the very early part of an administration the operation that our military would attack certain of our cities and make it appear that Cuba did it, to raise the American anger so that it would justify then the American people would demand an invasion of Cuba. Well, when I learned of Operation Northwoods, I thought to myself, you mean if that was on the table in 1961, it wouldn't be on the table in 2001?
And then you have this PNAC documented Nexus is in with.
Yeah. And you sit and look back, and then you find out that President Kennedy, a month later, no one knew why, fired the head of the Joint Chiefs and replaced him. Well, Kennedy never gave a reason, but you'd kind of have to think Northwoods had to play a bit of a role in that. I think that I would have been even more bold than Kennedy. Do you know what I would have did?
What?
I would have arrested them on charges of treason.
That's what should have happened.
Because in my opinion, what they put forward in Operation Northwoods was treason.
Hey, Willie, how you doing? Good, good. This is Alex. I'm about just about a tenth of a mile away from your house. I'm right up here by the gate. Okay, so that's what I've heard. Even when you're at home, you like to stay on the bus.
There's Willie.
Sorry, Willie, we drove by. We didn't know which bus. You know this fella.
I know, Jesse.
Willie.
Yeah.